Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. Join your host, her inner circle, and expert guests weekly for chats about dating, secure attachment, the solo lifestyle, doing relationships differently, and of course, sex. And here's your host, Janice Formicella.
We hear a lot these days about quote unquote toxic masculinity, and we certainly see many examples of it. I have an opinion on that term that my friend Barry and I are going to discuss. And so today we are going to be talking all about practicing healthy masculinity. That term is also problematic, but we're going to get into it with my friend Barry Selby. Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl for the first time. It's so good to see you.
You too. It's funny because I've been on your other podcast, so this is a different flavor. So I'm enjoying being here. It's going to be fun.
It is. We recorded an episode called Sex-Related Injuries last night. So definitely a different flavor. Barry and I recorded several episodes for Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On. And I might go ahead and drop this over there as well. I've still got a large community. But yeah, I'm really glad to have you back. I have been wanting to do an episode on divine feminine, divine masculine, or multiple episodes on this. Barry and I threw some ideas around and we decided that we would start with a general overview of masculinity. So before we get started, Barry, what is your intention for this episode? What is it? Why is this important for you to speak to my audience about?
Frankly, for me, it's really to share what my experience has been about being a man in this world. And also what I've learned about masculinity and what I've really embodied, and then what I teach other people, hopefully reaches another audience where may help men become better men in the world.
Thank you so much. And also thank you for being a better man in this world. There's someone who I respect highly and who I think embodies healthy masculinity, or you know what? Who embodies masculinity. Okay. We're going to make a shift here. Yeah. My intention for this show, or the reason I wanted to do this show, is because I believe firmly in the wealth of opportunities that come when the divine masculine and the divine feminine merge and create space for each other and form relationships and go out into the world to make an impact. And I also think that the concepts are misunderstood, and I want to spread it. I've myself experienced what can happen when I surrender to the divine masculine and everything that it's brought into my life. And also I've seen the difference that it's made in some men in my life. So Thank you for being here.
Sure.
Barry, we're going to unpack these definitions.
Yes.
But first, what is masculinity?
So yeah, before we could dive into what I term masculinity, I want to just explain like a framing, like a couple of things on the table to really clarify what it fits within. So for me, masculinity and femininity are two ends of the same spectrum, meaning that we carry both energies, so to speak, within us. But whatever gender we are, whatever sexual polarity we are, we get to live or move towards one end or the other depending on what's going on. And also, masculinity doesn't mean male. It actually tends towards being what men embody, whereas femininity is what women tend to embody. But there are very masculine women, there are very feminine men. And also, there are very straight feminine men and very straight masculine women, as well as gay ones as well, because the truth is that sexual polarity and the masculine feminine polarity are not necessarily 100% aligned all the time. They generally are, but not always. So that's to give a framing.
Okay, thank you
now
so
to
much.
masculinity.
I appreciate that because, as I said, these are concepts that I have found, especially outside of the communities that I tend to find myself, or not that I choose to be in, that this is misunderstood or just completely foreign. So thank you for that.
Sure. So the reason why I think what you were saying at the beginning about this thing about healthy and toxic masculinity, and why I think you're using the same feeling I have, is masculinity doesn't have either.
Oh, okay.
The way I frame it is, well, see, the thing is, for me, what's unhealthy or what is toxic is machoism. which is a different flavor of what men can be. And I'm putting on top of men because the toxicity of masculinity was a term applied to men, not to women. It's just the way it was been labeled and why we've been carrying that burden for quite a while. I believe personally, because I'll define the difference between machoism and masculinity, is why I think the toxicity has been mislabeled. Because for me, masculinity in its purest form is about, for men especially, having an open heart and clarity of direction. And we have like a calling in the world where we make a difference, but also we have an open heart, we have vulnerability, we have communication, we have connection. Whereas a macho man is much more about egotistical, my way or the highway, I'm doing it for me and screw you type energy, which frankly is toxic. So I should say, when it's
just
in extreme form.
toxic, would you say it's toxic masculinity or just toxic? I don't know if you remember, about a year and a half ago, I posted on Facebook, there's no such thing as toxic masculinity. Masculinity is masculinity, toxic is toxic. I mean, does that ring true to you? Because we actually engaged on that post.
Yes,
you and I.
I talked about it. I posted about that same thing too. Because for me, again, because masculinity itself isn't toxic. What it is frankly the highest calling for men to be. Especially when you talk about divine masculinity, that's the highest sort of elevated way of being a functioning participant in the world that is very positive and additive. The toxicity, which yes can be moved around, so to speak, to things, tends towards behavior that is negative towards other people. And machoism can, in its extreme form, be very negative towards other people, which is why it tends to conflate machoism with toxicity. But it doesn't mean they have to be that way. But toxicity is, for me, a way of being that is just negative towards other people and to self often as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And this isn't about the divine masculine, but I do firmly believe that it is inside of every man or individual who resides within the masculine. And same with the divine feminine. But I don't think that everybody is tapped into that, and that it's a shame, because as I said, there's a world of possibilities that can happen when somebody chooses to embody that.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. So Barry, you have had quite a spiritual, personal development journey to come into your own divine masculine or masculinity. And I love hearing about your dynamic background. So can you please let my listeners know why you became passionate about this?
Sure. I mentioned to you in communication before this about a movie that was out there, which is basically the mask we live in, I think it's called. But basically that was because it talks about how boys are taught to like man up, boys don't cry, be a man, that sort of thing, which we're taught when we're like 5, 6 years old. And I had that. And
everybody, I will link to this in the show notes. Is this the thing you sent me last night? That
was a preview for it. Yeah, the movie came out.
Oh, wow. I had chills. I was close to tears when I was watching that last night. Everyone go into the show notes. It really enveloped what the issue is, especially in this country.
And that's only
boys what we do.
That's only a preview. That's a preview. It's like a 3 or 4 minute preview. It's not even the whole thing. The movie came out again several years ago. I don't remember watching it again. Okay. But the thing I want to say about it is that culturally, we haven't given boys a real wide spectrum to play within and to be. And I grew up in my environment back in England, which wasn't much different, frankly, but even more so, perhaps, of being unemotional. Because England's not as famous for being an emotional expression, whereas America is much more emotional. So the boys in England, I felt like, were faced with the requirement to be less emotional even than American boys are. Perhaps that's an assumption.
Okay, but that's so interesting because we have so much more violence here.
Well, that to me is emotionally based, personally. So anyway, so back to my story. So I grew up in a family where I was firstborn, and my dad was, I would say, on the nice side of macho, because machoism really is the way that most men had been for generations, because they had to take care of the family. It's like, I'm going to get things done, make it happen, and take no prisoners. And the side effect of that is that my dad wasn't very emotionally expressive, which is true for most men of my dad's generation back in England. They weren't very emotive, they weren't very free. And as a kid, I couldn't relate to that. I felt emotional. I had feelings which I didn't know how to suppress at the time. And so what happened was those feelings were carried with me when I went to school. And frankly, for most of my teenage years, I was bullied by the other boys because I wasn't manning up. I wasn't being the tough guy. I wasn't being, you know, holding back the tears. I would basically show vulnerability because I was really, in the language of this labeling, I was the nice guy rather than the bad boy, which is a whole dating conversation as well, which we get into. But it meant that basically for 4.5, 5 years, I was in jeopardy. I was in fear. I was in a place where I had to avoid these small clique. There's like 4 or 5 of them. It wasn't like a gang, but it was like 4 or 5 boys who would sort of make their day to make me suffer. That was the way they thought. That's what bullying was about. So I didn't have a very powerful place of being a man growing up because that was the thing I was dealing with. So into my 20s and 30s, I started getting involved in personal development work, and I couldn't be the tough guy. That wasn't in my makeup. It wasn't the way I was being. So I didn't know how to be a strong leading man, so to speak. After many years of being in personal development and heal a lot of the baggage from my past and not carrying so many wounds around, I was lucky enough to find a teaching. Well, I say lucky enough. I was kicked in the backside by spirit, I'll put it that way, to dip into these teachings that basically talked about masculine and feminine polarity, which is where my passion grew and where my work developed from. This started back in 2007. And when I discovered that because I hadn't been raised up to that point, my belief about men was there was either the nice guy or the bad boy. That was the only two choices I had, which basically was the passive guy or the macho man, kind of the image I had. So when I discovered there's such thing as being a masculine man, which is the third option I'd never even thought about before, it blew my mind wide open because I suddenly realized that's what I wanted because it didn't deny my softness, my caring, my compassion, but it gave me some clarity about why I should stand up more strong in the world and stand in my own leadership and be a real man, so to speak, but not a real man like tough guy,
Right.
but a real man being authentic, about being caring, about being purpose-led. As one of the things we'll talk about later on about how being in purpose is so important.
Yeah.
But it gave me clarity because up to that point, I'd basically gone through life being kind of wishy-washy. I was just doing what jobs showed up. I changed careers 5, 6 times because it was the next thing to do, not what I was choosing to do. Big difference. And so there are men out there who've done, massive things in their lives and made big careers, but that was often done from an ego perspective, not from a service perspective, because part of the masculinity is also service. Whereas
That's true.
Whereas macho man's more about ego, like, look what I can do. I'm bringing it to you. I'm good at this. And so they take that on. And it can end up with the same result, but how they get it is very different.
Did you have examples around you of men who embodied this that you found revelatory or that you saw something in them that you wanted to know more about?
Well, the teachers I studied with definitely portrayed that and gave me that example. Looking around the world, there are quite a few men out there who do, like in leadership roles or in the movies and in different sort of media formats. There are men out there who do tend to indicate that they're of service. I mean, like George Clooney comes to mind because he's an actor who used to be very ego-driven, but there's a lot more kindness to him, the way he is in the world. Especially now because of his wife, he has a mission. He has a desire to be of service and use what he's earned to serve a bigger cause. At least that's the way I'm certain. Now, of course, I'm saying what I perceive it as. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what he is. So that's an example of somebody who's more masculine. But there are also men who are very ego-driven. Let me use one example. Harvey Weinstein. He wasn't serviceable. He's very macho-driven.
Yes, that's a.
So it's a stark example, but I want to use that as an illustration to get some examples on the table, so to speak.
Okay. And then I think there's a middle ground too of men who aren't tapped into either. And
that's what I was for years. Yeah.
Also something that you can identify, especially as somebody who I think is actualized and has an understanding of the divine masculine and divine feminine. You can really see when a man is just kind of in the middle or just hasn't stepped into the possibility of being masculine. And so when it comes to learning about all of this, would you say that you had an aha moment?
I had several, but one of them I'll just illustrate. I basically, the kick in the butt I got from Spirit was I was walking out of the spiritual center I attend. I still go there. It was after a service one day, and this woman was walking in who was radiant, and this is 2007. I had very low confidence talking to good-looking women, really good-looking women. These beautiful women like scared me at that point. Even though I was done this work, I didn't know how to approach them without feeling like I'd put them on a pedestal or something. That was the way I was wired. So anyway, this woman's walking in. She was radiant, beautiful, long blonde hair, beautiful tan, very, very sexy woman. But it felt like there was a neon sign over her head that spirit was saying, "Talk to this woman," like pointing at her. And so I knew I could not do this now. Much as I didn't want to, because I was like, she's too cool for school, sort of thing. I said, okay. I went up to her and I said something on the lines of, and it was something that came out this way was, I don't know where you've been, but I know I need to talk to you. Like, you're glowing. Where have you been? And something like that. And she burst out laughing. It was a cute line. Anyway, she just got back from a retreat for this organization out of Vancouver called Warrior Sage, which is Satyana Suzanne Raja, who I didn't know about at the time. But the following weekend was an introduction to their work. So I went with her to that introduction. Literally, it was like bang, 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 right behind each other. But the thing was, she gave me the gift of bringing me these teachers who talked about how, as as humans, we start up very young, where we basically, when we're born, we come in naturally as our resident self, where it's naturally feminine, naturally masculine. But then life happens to us.
Barry, before we talk about the impacts and why it's time to walk away from machoism, can you let my listeners know where you would like them to go and hang out with you online?
Sure. I mean, I post stuff on social media, but I mean, my website's the best place to start. But basically, my website is my name, and basically, most of my social media is my name as well. So barryselby.com is my site. And in fact, I'm working on a second, I have quizzes I put up now. So I've got one quiz out there, which is a relationship readiness assessment. So if you want to find if you're ready for a relationship, you can take the quiz. That's on my homepage. I'm building a new quiz, which will be out hopefully in about a week or two. I'm getting some kinks a bit sorted out, which is more self-relationship centric, because I'm really more about the relationship you have with yourself inside first, because I want to become a better partner to attract a better partner. So that's what I'm working on a quiz for that. So basically, you go to my website, you can either sign up for a discovery session with me right there, or at the bottom of the screen, you can be on my email list so you can get to know what I'm doing. But my name on social media is Barry Selby. So Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc.
Go to the show note. And also, please, everyone, Barry has a book called 50 Ways to Love Your Lover. I have it in my library. Go and get it on Amazon. And again, the link is in the show notes. And if you really want to turn your love life around or make your relationships better with yourself and others, go and book a free discovery call. I think that it will, really change your life, your outcome. So
thank you.
Thank you again.
So that introduction got me so excited. I signed up for the next workshop, which is in a couple of months. So I went to the workshop, and basically what it was based on David Data's teaching. So I've also now studied with, who's an amazing teacher as well. Very strange, but great teachings.
A little polarizing. I think you really need to get in there and start and, commit to understanding.
Yeah. So basically in this workshop, which was really wonderful. I mean, the teachings were so accessible, which one thing I loved about it. It was so hands-on. In fact, what happened was each break, the men would go in one room, women in a different room. We would do masculine and feminine practices in our own rooms together, on our own collective rooms. Then we come back together. And through the whole weekend, we were doing this. So we're getting deeper and deeper into our own natural polarity, each side of the room. And then by the end of the weekend, we'd be sitting facing the front and listening to what's going on. Instead, when we came up for the last break at the end of the weekend, we stood facing each other. So there was a row of about 50 men facing a row of 50 women. And so we, in our masculinity, because we'd really been working on that, were just I felt like I was shoulder to shoulder with my brothers. We were solid, anchored into the ground, feeling very, very affirmed, very rich, very deep, and very vulnerable at the same time. It's a beautiful experience. But also the brotherhood with these other men who, when I first walked in the room, I was solely not trusting any of them. But we felt so close at this point, which happens in these sort of workshops. But across the room was this row of women, and they were owning their femininity. And I mean owning it. It was the first time I experienced that much, I want to say sexual, but sensual energy oozing out of women in mass. And I'm using oozing because it was so juicy and so rich, but also so authentic. And so what happened was I had the experience in that moment of standing solidly on my feet side by side with my brothers, and at the same time internally down on my knees in worship to the feminine. And I just felt such gratitude for the feminine energy on the planet, and knew that my work would involve that for the rest of my life.
Wow, I have chills. That's beautiful. And also well done for being receptive to that. Let's talk about why it's time to really make a commitment to walking away from machoism. And we are going to speak to what men and women can do to contribute to this. Maybe let's just talk about some of the impacts that maybe not everyone sees of this. The first being that we are in a complete crisis when it comes to men's mental health. And it
Yeah.
is largely, if not fully, because of this culture.
We have unfortunately, well, part of it is, and I'll say it this way first, is that up until very recently, the only portion of the population who was looked upon as not having any problems was the straight white Christian male. All other parts of the population were demeaned or labeled, whether it's immigrants or Hispanics or women or gay, or those parts of the population were looked upon as being something wrong with them. That's the way society taught and looked at them. So most of the people, one, have never felt like they were perfect, but two, have maybe done things to improve their own lives. Whereas a straight white Christian male who never thought there was anything wrong with them has been immune to this. They've not thought about them having to do anything. So they have no tools, no skills when crises happen. And so the challenge we have with this current society with mental health is a lot of men, particularly, and a lot of young men who didn't have fathers who could teach them this, because the other part is generational, are basically facing problems in the world and having no tools with which to work with to actually deal with the world in a way that works. And so their resources tend to be either violence or self-violence or shutting down or isolation, all those things that frankly don't help, but it's their coping mechanisms.
Thank you. I'm glad that the tides are starting to turn, or at least there's some more
Mm-hmm.
awareness around this. But like, really, this is a big crisis, as I was saying. One of the perhaps more obvious issues would be the ongoing degradation of women in personal and public spheres. I
Mm-hmm.
think that we're not talking about domestic violence enough. It is just continuing to rise. Women being killed by their partners is actually one of the absolute top ways that females die in the States. And that's because we are allowing this to continue and raising
Right.
boys in a context and in an environment that leaves this type of behavior as an option.
That's why I said what I said was the point is that when men don't have any tools to work with, when a woman challenges them or stands next to them or is basically not nice to them, they don't know what to do with that. And so they tend to do things that are negative, that are restrictive, that may be violent, just not healthy. So I personally feel that, yes, I'm totally on the same page with you, that this whole thing of domestic violence and women being at risk is sickening to me. I have such a visceral upset about women being demeaned or put down by any level. And unfortunately, a lot of men out there don't know how to be with them in a way that's respectful, that's honorable, and is allowing them to be fully expressed. The challenge we have in society, again, societal norms, is that women have always been less than men in the culture. It's been just over 50 years since women got their first got their credit cards and bank accounts.
Yeah.
It's not that long ago. So we're dealing with a culture that hasn't yet matured enough where women and men are equal to each other in terms of standards of living or of being respected or having, being received.
These
And so
perspectives still exist because they're
yeah,
passed down.
yeah, exactly. And it's one of the challenges is that we don't require men to have, well, women for that matter, to have guidance or support to unpack or to undo some of the damage that's been inflicted by their parents. We are like mass-produced machines, basically repeating what our parents did, what their grandparents did, what the parents before them did, because we learn at the feet of those who are our parents when we're very young without any self-will. We get imprinted at 3, 4, 5 years old by our parents modeling of how to be in a relationship or how to be male or female. And then we mimic that growing up without any thought about we could do it differently. So unfortunately, our society tends to be in that cycle for generations.
And men and women both contribute to helping boys know that there's other ways
Yes.
to do things. And
Um,
of course, the degradation of women in the public sphere as well, which just creates a snowball effect that I'm sure a lot of my listeners would be well aware of.
mhm.
One of the things that I put down as far as the impacts of toxic masculine, or excuse me, one of the impacts of machoism and why
There we
it's
go.
time to walk away is because there are so many men existing and walking around in this world and interacting with each other and with women who don't know their essence, who are not fully actualized, who don't know their potential. And that
Right.
really gets to me. I mean, there's so many men who don't know what they're capable of. And I think that it's because of this.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned about in the intro workshop, it talks about the shells we put on the shell, they keep laying up on layer. So many men, and I was one of them for quite a while, would walk around basically think the shell was who they were, but it's not. It's just another layer of protection, and so who they were inside was never visible. It's like the light didn't shine inside, so they weren't seeing themselves as they really were. And that's again one of the issues we have, and women have the same thing to a degree. But again, as I said earlier, women were not like looked upon equally as men, so they thought there was something wrong with them. So women have looked at themselves more easily than men have. So a lot of women have done their own work, or have looked at themselves and said, what can I do to be better? What can I do to be more authentic? And also realize that who they are is a lot more than the society thinks they are. So
Yeah, thank you for
for
that.
men, yeah. So for men, there's this continuous assumptive energy that's like, don't do anything to fix it, just put up with it.
That's partially what the communities that you're involved with are helping to promote, and a lot of other advocates. I'm really thankful for that. I do think we're going to see a shift. I hope so, at least. Barry,
Yeah.
one of the things that you wanted to talk about, which I'm excited for this conversation, is women's role in all of this, and women, how you put it is women choosing better, which I thought was quite bold of you. um,
Mhm.
let's go there.
Well, it's somewhere to
Lay it
attack this.
on me, Barry.
Well, basically, there's so much to talk about in this, but let me keep it succinct. Women have been trained also by a culture and society that they need to get married and have kids at some point in their lives, which unfortunately a lot of women don't fit into. And so so there's that
I'm not
rule.
doing that shit.
So and because the choices for men out there are not going to be the best choices, women have chosen less than. They've settled, in quotes, for less than they really deserve because they couldn't find what they wanted. And they're not willing to wait.
And
And
there's
one of
the
the
choose me. Would you say this goes into like the choose me culture that women largely reside in?
Because the part of it, the challenge we're facing also is that we're moving, and it's part of cultural shift too, is that women for a long time were basically the baby machines. They basically got pregnant, had kids. That was part of what women's path was, which is why they didn't have big business careers, because women, basically black and white choice. You either go for a career or you have a family. You can't do both because men weren't required to do anything. Now it's changing quite a lot. Where now stay-at-home dads, there are co-ed family raising environments too, where both parents do things with the kids. There are businesses that help them do that as well. So it's changing, but not largely. Hasn't changed over the world. So part of that is the face that they're dealing with that. The other part is that women, again, because women are starting to evolve beyond the old paradigm where they were less than men, their dating choices have to catch up with that.
All right.
Meaning that they have to, and this is, I'm going to say this way, women need to raise their standards about what they choose, which is going to require men to stand up taller to be chosen. That's where
Awesome.
the change is
I'm
coming.
smiling from ear to ear right now. How does a woman know?
Know about what man to be with.
Yeah.
Partly is you got to take, first of all, take your time. Don't let it
Okay.
convince you,
Mhm.
but watch what he does. Like I talk about how I've been watching how men act and interact in the world. A man's deeds speak much louder than his voice does. So watch how a man acts, how he treats other people. Does he respect the busboy? Does he open the door for people? Does he let people in traffic? Does he have a reason? And this is the big one. Does he have a calling about why he's on this planet?
Say that one more time, please.
For a man who's owning his masculinity, part of that requires him to have a clarity about what his why is.
Mm,
Why he's on the planet? What's his calling? It may be his career, but it might be something different from that. But it's something
yeah.
that he thrives in because when he does that, he doesn't put that pressure on his partner.
Mhm. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think identifying a man who has a purpose. I know this is cliched, and we've been talking about this to death for the past couple of years in this space. But what what do you think could be two or three quote unquote red flags?
Well, the first one, which is true for both genders, is on the first date, they complain and whine about their ex.
Oh my God, I was going to say that.
It's so obvious, it's just
Yeah.
that too. It's not unusual. It's just the way it is. So that's one of them. And the second one is actions don't match deeds. Sorry, actions don't match words. To be trustworthy, you got to keep your agreements. Say what you're going to do, and then do it. Or if you're not going to do it, say no. it's saying no to something is more powerful than saying yes and not doing it. That clear.
Mhm.
So for men and for women especially as well, having your actions and your words match each other is a key thing too. The third one, and this is actually something that I talk about, a requirement, I think, what I said recently on an interview was that what women need in a man are two main things. One, to feel safe,
Mm.
one, to feel they can trust him. So for men to have is they got to be a safe place for them to be, women to be, and also they got to be trustworthy. But if they don't
And
have those, those are red flags.
and women who are listening, really, really, really be honest with yourself about those two things. I think
Oh,
there
yeah.
is still the choose me culture. I think a lot of women really, really want to be in relationships. I'm really happy about the high value women movement, which I'll be doing an episode on because that's about choosing and not being chosen. And also, you start to go so quickly sometimes in relationships that you don't even ask yourself, much less be honest with yourself about what you're seeing.
One more thing I want to drop in there because it came up as well. Something else as a red flag is ladies do not date a fixer-upper, meaning that
Oh,
when you
you mean
meet
someone that you need to
to
improve,
work
or
on.
a
Yes,
project.
yeah,
No.
exactly.
Okay.
So you want a man who's already done his work, or is doing his,
Mhm.
is already growing, he's already thriving. And I don't necessarily mean about being successful in the world, but he's is internally successful. He's owning his
Mhm.
stuff. He's honest. He's real, and he's
Mhm.
present.
And if you have questions about what you're experiencing in your dating journey, Barry and I both work with people on this. So
Yes,
hit us
indeed.
up. We'd love to help. We are going to wrap up this amazing episode, and thank you for the fifth time for doing this. Oh,
My
by the
pleasure.
way, everybody, if you are digging this, if you're feeling the turn on, Barry and I are going to be doing an episode in a couple weeks called Honoring the Divine Feminine. Oh my god. So keep your eyes on this space. Let's wrap it up with some ways to embody masculinity, quote unquote, healthy
Mhm.
masculinity.
Right.
Um, First of all, let's encourage men, anyone listening who wants to fully step into this. Let's talk about your feelings. Let's talk about your problems more.
The thing is that for men, especially in this conversation, part of this work is you've really got to seek help from somebody who can guide you, who's either walked the path you've walked or who's got the skills to help you with it, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a guide. The challenge for most men is that they haven't been willing to, and I still face this even though I've done all this work over the years for many, many years, is the temptation to go, I don't need any help, I'm fine. I'll do it myself. It's like it's okay to be vulnerable enough to ask for help.
Mhm.
However, I don't recommend getting it from your partner because that's a disabling energy. So if you're
Okay,
in a
I like
relationship,
that.
if you're
Mhm.
in a relationship, your partner doesn't want to be, you don't want your partner to be a therapist. And ladies, you do not want to be your partner's therapist, and vice versa. Which makes dating for me very interesting too, because I know what I'm talking. I know this stuff. So when I'm with women who haven't done their work, it's hard not to want to be, a therapist. So anyway, so step away from that. So one of the things for men is to really be willing to face your own demons, and having somebody who can have you sort of like be in your corner for you, who's not your partner, is a good thing. So you can face them with somebody who's got like the space to hold you, so you can then go there and get through it. Second piece, I did talk about this about purpose for men having clarity about what their why is. The way that David Days, one teacher, talk about. He has a book called The Way of the Superior Man. It's a great book. It's been out 25, 30 years. It's a seminal book. And chapter 7, because I know his chapters, quite a few chapters were, one chapter stands out. He says that a man's purpose must come before his relationship.
Mhm.
Because,
I believe wholeheartedly in that. As yeah, individuals in general, I would
yeah,
love you to speak, yes, more about the why and the purpose.
because when we're in masculinity, truly, we are tend to be more linear, more single focus. And when we meet somebody, that becomes all consuming and all enveloping. So when you find a woman we want to be with, it's like nothing else exists, sort of thing. We can be that way. The challenge, though, is that when we do that, our life becomes a bit like wishy-washy, really messy because we're not focusing on our lives anymore. So it's important for us as men to know what our why is, what our work in the world is, what we're about. Because when that's running, almost like autopilot, then it's running on its own. It's like we can maintain that, we keep going. We have a relationship, it becomes like a second piece we add to what we're already doing. Now, the reason we do that is so that we don't put that weight on our partner. So women sometimes say, no, I want to be first in his life. It's like, no, you don't want to be first in his life. He needs to have a why, what he's up to in the world that keeps him going no matter what. So when he's with you, he can relax with you and have fun with you and be a good partner. I personally, because the work I do also in the spiritual work, is I believe actually it's the third thing. The relationship is third after relationship to spirit, then purpose, then relationship, because those two areas of spiritual relationship and purpose are not required for your partner to carry. So for a man, having those things working in his life, like having a spiritual practice of some sort, whether it's church or temple or synagogue or Buddhism, whatever it is you study, that is your a life for you,
What
and then
would
having
be
it work
another
in the world.
example of connection to spirit or relationship with spirit for somebody who doesn't necessarily resonate with following a specific spiritual or religious practice or going to church?
I went through that, so I know.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, being raised Jewish. I went through my bar mitzvah at age 13,
Mhm.
and I went through my spiritual crisis 2 weeks later. I basically went.
Wait, were you 12, right? Or 13?
The bar mitzvah was 13. I'm a 13th birthday, and basically I went through my spiritual crisis in my teens because I didn't fit in the world that I was being created into. Like the religious teaching of Judaism, or should say the physical world experience of Judaism didn't fit me. I felt alienated from it. And so, because it's the only thing I knew growing up, I basically went into my own spiritual crisis of not knowing what I believed. And
This is
so into
so
my 20s,
interesting because Mormons also begin to be initiated at this exact same age. And
yeah,
I felt that too. I was like, I felt different and I felt as though I was already rejecting it. I felt like I didn't want to follow the rules like immediately
yeah. And
when I started going through that process.
for me, the one thing that stood out is because when they did my bar mitzvah, the thing they said was, "You're now a man." And at 13, I'm going, "What the hell?
I'm a man.
Like, what does that mean?"
Hello.
It was so for me, I went through my own spiritual crisis. So to those men out there who don't have a allegiance to a spiritual teaching or don't feel aligned to it, you start checking inside because my belief is, and again, may not be true
Okay.
for other people, but my truth is that the spirit is within. So start doing things that support you within, whether it's a meditation practice or yoga,
I was gonna
hiking,
say that.
something physical where you can actually connect outside of societies, like especially not scrolling your phone, but doing things that can really connect you back to yourself. That's a good place to
Mhm.
start.
Yeah, I mean, even a few minutes of meditation a day, I think, is going to help you get to this point.
Yeah,
Something also that I think is very important for men who want to embody masculinity is learning about healthy communication. This is one of the biggest problems in our society in general these days. This is one reason why people are unhappy in general. This is one reason that men don't talk about their feelings is because they don't know how to communicate. Women as well, but learning about healthy communication is a process, is something that you commit to. It is intentional. And this, if you really want to embody and bring on this light that some of the men I know have inside of them, this would be a maybe a practical way to go about it.
absolutely. The best way I can describe this is, and I've done this work a lot with couples and with singles as well, is that we have this tendency, because the way we're raised in society, to talk to each other about each other versus ourselves. So ownership language is a big part of this conversation, meaning that instead of saying, if you're in an argument with your partner and you just go, no, you did this to me, or you made me upset, or you all this sort of stuff, which most people tend to do. I'm upset because you didn't take out the garbage. Like, well, the truth is, you got upset because the garbage didn't get taken out, and you're blaming the other person for your upset. So if you're in a situation where you're saying, you did this to me, it's like you're giving, first of all, you're giving them the puppet strings to your puppeteering. So you'd be absolutely at their mercy, which is an unhealthy place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than saying, when you did that, I got upset. So I chose it. It means that I have control. Because first of all, when you say that, great, I can choose differently. So it's not like they have
Yeah.
control over you. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of
It's
the biggest
about,
pieces.
go ahead.
Well, say it's one of the biggest things of freeing yourself is to start realizing that what you're saying is about you, not about them. So take
Mm-hmm.
ownership of your own languaging. So when you speak about what you're going through, you then have dominion over changing it.
Yeah, it's very, very empowering. I think you are the only person who is responsible for your triggers.
Mhm.
And before you start even to have a conversation about that, is to look inside and ask yourself, why is this getting to me? And then
Yep.
move from there. Mhm.
Absolutely.
And I think that that can be hard for some men. And so
It-
I could say that could be something to practice. When you
yeah.
feel activated, triggered, ask yourself why.
Oh, just to be transparent. I mean, I've done this work for many years and it took a lot of practice and it still shows up once in a while where I just totally forget and start blaming somebody. Oh, hang. It's like I catch myself after going, hang a
Yeah.
second. It's about me. I shouldn't. It's like, give me 10 seconds. Give me like a minute. Go for a walk and I'll come back because then I'll just reset and go, hang a second. So whereas I get upset because of what I thought you were doing. You want something
Yeah.
about what you.
Or having been reminded of something that already happened
Mhm.
in the past. I've gone through that recently, actually, in my own relationship, and it can help form a bond. But like I already said, it's very very empowering to know that you are the only one responsible for
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
The last thing that I want to speak to, as far as ways to move toward embodying masculinity, is also something that I think generally resides in conversations in which women engage, and that is self-care and refueling. I don't think enough men have a concept of this or prioritize this at all, and this is so important. Can you please speak to this?
Of course. It is something that you speak earlier about, the challenge we have with men being, suicidal or just being depressed or those sort of things is because men aren't, I don't think, have learned tools to better balance that work-life balance in a sense, where basically they're out doing, 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 and if they're not doing the thing, there's something wrong with them. Frankly, we are wired to accomplish goals. That's the way the masculine is functional, is like to achieve a goal. When we do that, the next thing to do is actually two things. The next two things to do. One is to have another goal lined up, but also take time to relax.
Mm.
We need, as men, we need to have downtime. Not all the time, but like when we've done something, there's an opportunity to celebrate and to also self honor after you finish that goal.
Oh, that's
For example,
beautiful.
if you're busy doing where you have a goal, you've got a goal to change launch a business. You may have like 12 steps along the way that do that. So each step becomes a goal. And so each step can be something that you accomplish, you celebrate, and then you do something in between. William Leonard has a book out called Mastery that came out 50 years ago, I think it is now. It's ages old book, but he talks about
Repeat that
plateaus.
for the listeners.
Yes, so the book's about. He talks about plateaus, meaning that when you're climbing up, you're getting bigger and bigger. Every so often you hit a plateau, and you might think it's that you're done. It's like you're not, but it's a good chance to reset and respite, and also restore, because oftentimes for men, we are so wired to be in the process of getting things done and getting to the goal that we don't know when to stop. And so having time to refuel and to restore, which can be do something different. It can be do something as simple as, again, like it could be physical exercise or yoga if you're working at a desk all the time. Doing something physical could be something you need to do, maybe even every day after you finish your day's work or before you start, to sort of get your body engaged with life. But also when you finish a big project, taking time to do something other than that, to take your mind off of it, to reset, is a good thing to do as well.
And doing it on your own also, I think, is important for women and men. Go and take some time by yourself.
Well, the
I think
reason
that that can be important.
I think the reason why you say that, I think I agree with it, is and not to spend all your time alone, but it's to spend some time.
No.
It's something that's contained within your own consciousness.
Mhm.
If you do it with your partner all the time, then it all becomes like they become the reason why, and it's not healthy. You want to
Yeah,
be
that's why I'm
self-sufficient.
saying that. Yes,
Yeah.
it's not all going out and celebrating with your girlfriend. This is going and taking time on your own to refuel.
Well, the thing is also is you can do the celebration with your friends or with your partner after you've
Definitely.
done that, but definitely do
Yeah.
that first. Yeah,
After
because
you've done that, yes.
exactly. Because in a way, what you're doing is it could be as simple as, you finish something, you've done a great job, and you take 5 minutes to go outside, and you like, you put your hand over your heart and go, thank you, I did a great job. Something as simple as that could be the most innocuous, but the simplest thing you can do that sets you up for success because now you are resetting and thanking yourself for what you've done. And then you go mingle or socialize or do things other than that. But it's definitely that moment with yourself that's important.
Yeah. And go and be generous and to your woman, which is a part of this. Barry, thank you. Final words?
Um, there's hope for all of us, put it simply. And for the women out there, definitely hold yourself to a high enough account that the man you choose does respect you, does take care of you, does provide a safe space, and also is trustworthy. And for men, be that safe space. When you're around women, can you be safer rather than taking? Can you be willing to serve rather than to take? If you do that with women around, not just your girlfriend, but sisters, collaborate, co-workers, women in this, women in the markets, like just be respectful, be caring and be trustworthy so that they don't feel threatened. Because just words to the wise for the men out there, most women feel fearful from men all the time. And so if we can become more and more trustworthy of ourselves, I think we're going to change the planet for the women as well.
All right, I'll leave it at that. I have nothing else, nothing else to say. Thank you so much, Barry Selby. Everyone go to the show notes, follow, please hit them up if you want to explore this more. And thank you to everybody who listened. Thank you to all of my new followers at Sex and the Solo Girl. I'm very, 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 very thankful for you. If you want to let me know what you think, please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple. If you don't like my stuff, I don't need to hear from you. All right. Have fun out there, and I'll see you next week. Say bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formicella, the podcast for those who want to add more flavor to their relationships with themselves and others. If you liked today's episode, make sure to head over to Instagram and let her know. See you next week.